With great sorrow, Jesus declared, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets and stonest them, which are sent unto thee, how often would I have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathereth her chickens under her wings, and ye would not. Behold, your house is left unto you desolate. For over 2,000 years, God had tried to gather together and heal and build up those Israelites who would cling to the true God. But like the rest of Noah's descendants, they refused to be led by God. They didn't want to do it God's way and wanted to live life their own way. If they had chosen to do it God's way, they would have had such a better life. But they chose human leaders who led them astray. They mixed paganism with the ways of God because they wanted to be like the nations around them. And they worshipped goddesses and heroic gods, rejecting the commandments that were now no longer befitting. In the end, they rejected the Messiah that they had waited for with such incredible anticipation. In the year 70 AD, the temple was destroyed. In the beginning, the Christians were eager to keep the faith pure from man-made myths and legends, and all because of the experience of the Jews. Because of this, they were sorely persecuted from both the citizens and the rulers in the Roman Empire. And because they kept the true faith of God and refused to conform to pagan practices and theology, then the pagans were provoked to anger. Many lost their lives as they refused to bow their knees to the Roman leaders and their gods. In danger of losing their lives, they preached salvation through God alone and told them that the gods the Romans prayed to were actually only fallen angels and dead men. Even though the Christians advanced in social status when the Roman Empire tried to make peace with them, this would actually lead to an even worse spiritual condition. Many of the pagans that became Christians still loved the customs and traditions that they held as idol worshippers. At the same time, there was a hatred towards the Jews because of the way they had treated the Christians in Rome. Many of the Christians who were bitter towards the Jews became arrogant, even rejecting light that God had actually given to the Jews. It was light that Jesus wanted to be their foundation, so they could understand who he was, what he stood for, and what his will was for them. The result crept in surreptitiously. After several years of persecution, many agreed to peace, but only by compromise. And so the Christians became more and more paganized and adopted the pagan religion into the Christian faith. And the reward came without delay. When the Romans realized that their pagan worship had gained respect, they had no problem in welcoming Christ into their religious world. Jesus asked the Jews to witness to the world about him. Not only did he choose the Jews to do this, but he also told them to go to the lost tribes of Israel first. Together, they were to reach the pagans and tell the whole world about God, the truth, his mission, and his salvation. This they did, Jesus and his disciples preached to the whole of Judea and Samaria. Subsequently, they were joined by more disciples, which included Paul, and they travelled to Ethiopia, Antioch, and Cyprus, Turkey, Persia, India, Galatia, and to the Celts. Many of these, among them Peter and Paul, warned them that there would come false teachings among the Christians. There would also be false teachers who would lead away Christianity in the wrong direction. Paul warned us directly and told us that there would come a falling away. The Jewish Christians that fled from Jerusalem after Stephen was stoned and before the destruction of Jerusalem moved north of Judea to Antioch in Syria. Therefore, Antioch did not just become a centre for missions to Africa, Ethiopia and Europe. It also became a place where the truth regarding the Messiah was faithfully preserved. Therefore, the Christians in Antioch came into conflict with the Christians in Alexandria and Rome, who had already begun to intermingle the faith of Jesus with pagan philosophy. In Alexandria, there was a great hatred towards the Jews. Thus the Alexandrians tried to distance themselves from the Jewish teachings and from the Jewish roots of Jesus. The congregation in Antioch tried to warn their brothers in Alexandria against this, but without any success. Gnosticism of Alexandria, Egypt. Antioch's rival was a union of pagan philosophy and gospel truths. While it was founding churches and building colleges, it rejected the Old Testament, denied creation, and held in contempt all Jews, even Christian Jews. The historian Newman goes on to describe the difference between the theology in Antioch and in Alexandria. In the great Christological controversies of the 4th and following centuries, Alexandria and Antioch were always antagonists. Alexandria representing a mystical transcendentalism and promoting the allegorical interpretation of the scriptures. Antioch insisting on the grammatico-historical interpretation of the scriptures, and having no sympathy with mystical modes of thought. In their stand for the pure doctrines of Christianity, the churches of Syria were horrified at the license which so many so-called Christian teachers took with the scriptures, and they rebelled against the doctrines of Gnosticism which arose in the corrupted Christianity of the church in Alexandria. The school of Antioch led a revolt against the Alexandrian exegesis of Holy Scripture and founded a more critical method. The churches in Rome and Alexandria were growing closer to each other, and time after time they agreed on many religious decisions. Thus they gained great religious power. They changed the time for Passover, but the church in Antioch refused to follow their direction. Around 195 to 200 AD, the church in Antioch, along with several other churches in Asia, were excommunicated by Pope Victor I in Rome. Although Rome did not officially support Gnosticism, she was attracted by the mysterious and philosophical mindset.